Billiken fans? It's Zach Miller and Peter Hale. This is the Midtown Madness Podcast. Before we get going, if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. Of course, this episode and the whole season of the Midtown Madness Podcast is brought to you by Two Men in a Garden. Not only is it Billiken season again, but as we head further into fall and now winter, NFL season is back, and football Sundays are nothing without chips and salsa, in my opinion. Whether you like it mild or hot, chunky or cantina style, the people over at Two Men have you covered. You can pick up their many products at any local grocery stores or online at twomeninthegarden.com. And if you didn't know, they're out at the Tower Grove Farmers Market as well every Saturday. So go find them there as well. I believe that's probably winding to an end as the season turns colder. And follow them on social media, Two Men Salsa on Instagram and Twitter. Pete, we talked about transition to baseball to basketball, but I mean, hockey's this weekend, and I'm excited about hockey. Although, I was shocked that I actually went to the men's soccer game last night because there was hockey on. Normally, if there's two St. Louis sports, I might stay home if it's not a Billiken basketball situation.
Why? So you can get the two screens going at once?
You're GD right. I am the king of ADHD. 2, 3, 4 screens. It really doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's Blues get off to a good start last night, of course, against the lowly Columbus Blue Jackets. But that's not why we're here, Pete. We're here to talk about Billiken sports. And we have a ton to talk about today. A10 Media Day for men's basketball. Both soccer teams were in action. They're making pushes down the stretch. And don't look now, Pete, but men's soccer is in second place. And I don't know how they got there. I mean, I think we all, well, to be fair, I think we've all said that this was going to be a season where the A10 schedule was going to be important. Way more important than last year. But they're making a push for first place in the conference, and women's soccer continues to dominate. And we aren't going to let an exciting new merch drop without leading off with it, Pete.
Yeah, that's always where we're going to go first. We'll get into the rest of that stuff. We've got a big show for you. But Zach, we had a fun one this week. This was 19-9. It's one we've known about for a while.
It was one that was like, it was up in the air. Was it? It was very much like Ross and Rachel. It was like it was a will they, won't they, you know?
Right.
Like a Diane and Sam from Cheers.
Yeah.
You know? So we weren't sure if it was ever going to happen because we heard it was on, then we heard that it was off, and so. But it was an exciting tease, Pete. They teased us a little bit.
They did. I loved the tweet. I wasn't expecting it. It was very out of the blue. And then all of a sudden, here's this tweet from 19-9. It's a photo of Larry Hughes in his SLU jersey, and then Quentin Richardson in DePaul. So both from their college days. And the line was, this week we get to celebrate a couple of college basketball's greatest hometown heroes. Who is your favorite college basketball player ever to play for the city they grew up in? For us, it doesn't get much better than these two. And then they put out another little teaser during A10 Media Day on Thursday. So we got kind of a sneak preview of the shorts and the shirt. And man, between those two, it was like, I knew I was gonna be all in on this release.
Yeah, really great social media from these guys.
Yeah.
Everything about this release was top notch. Home Field has their style. 19-9 certainly has a style that's a lot more colorful.
Mm-hmm.
The colors just popped on every piece they released. And Pete, we're going to get into it, but not on this show. Not on this episode.
No, we're going to do a very special episode for you guys later. So keep your ears peeled for that, your eyes peeled for that one. We'll have much more to say on this for you.
Yeah, but for now we'll talk about it. It's 7 pieces. There's shirts, there's shorts, there's a duffel bag. It's all very, very, very cool stuff. But go over to 199.com. You can either, follow /collections /St. Louis Billiken, or you can just, click through the links to get there. Free shipping code Billikens, although you can get 10% off if you sign up for their email list. And if you buy enough, you're already getting free shipping. So head over to 19.9, and we're going to have a more in-depth review. Just kind of go down what we thought of each piece in the collection, either later this week or next week. And I think that is a decent segue into a little show announcement. This next coming week, we are going to take off. Obviously, we're coming into basketball season. It's going to be, as much as we love doing the show, it's going to be, we can't miss a Sunday. So we're going to take this next one, relax, and then come back for you the next week. And we may drop that special episode Sunday, but we're just not going to record this coming Sunday. Big news on the men's basketball side, Pete. Jordan Goodwin has made an NBA opening night roster.
I'm so excited, Zach. I mean, this is like, we always talk about how much we root for guys, in their next steps, no matter what they're doing. Billikens we root for life, and Goodwin is a local guy. He stuck it out at SLU after, tough situation his freshman year we won't get into. But stuck around the program, stayed with it, really put his nose to the grindstone. And I don't know if there are many people around the program who have worked as hard as him to build out their game, to take it to the next level, and now to make an NBA opening day roster. So happy for him, the program. And what I really love about this is, if you're a local player, you're looking at SLU, you're looking at some other schools, you're thinking like, there is a viable roadmap here. If I'm not a lot of guys are thinking I'm not a 4 or 5 star recruit. I've got an offer from SLU. I've got a chance to go there to play a few years. You can see how this can happen. Like this is, it's right there. I tweeted, it's kind of cheesy, but I tweeted out, there is no substitute for hard work. Jordan Goodwin was never a no doubt prospect. He wasn't drafted.
As much as his guys over in Belleville wanted to, say league him, he's the GOAT.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just not.
No,
that's not the case.
His size is kind of in between. He was never like a super lights out shooter. Like there was never anything that made you say like, oh yeah, for sure. He was never a sure thing. And this just shows like it can be done. If you're a good player who does the work, who makes your game NBA ready, they'll find you. You don't need to go to a Big Ten or ACC or SEC school. You can do it from anywhere. And to watch a local kid do that through SLU is we love nothing more than that.
Yeah, he is the first SLU player on an opening day roster since who, Pete?
Willie Reed on the LA Clippers in 2017. It actually feels like it's been longer than that when I saw that.
Mr. Rise and Grind himself.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, for whatever reason, I was like 2017 feels like, but I guess he was around in the league, in and out for a few years there, and I think he should have had a longer career. I think he didn't have a great agent, but yeah, it's the first time in 5 years we've had a Billiken make an opening day roster, and that's really exciting.
And all those people that bought Willie Reed Wizards jerseys are smiling now. Their investment has paid off, and I may have to dabble. Maybe a jersey, right? Might be more.
You mean the Goodwin jersey last year?
Yeah,
right. Yeah, and he's wearing. It looks like he's going to be wearing number 7 again, so he didn't change numbers either.
Let's talk about A10 Media Day. Thursday, October 13th at Barclays Center. The A10 coaches descended on the city of Brooklyn, New York. Well, it's the borough of Brooklyn, city of New York, I think.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay, cool. But I think the most interesting part of this for Billiken fans was the Field of 68 podcast interview, because I thought Media Day was kind of lame. Like, I just didn't get anything out of it. And I always say that stuff is not for us. Like, it's for, I don't know what Media Day is for. And it's kind of, it's marketed to us, but there's never, it's all like fluff.
It feels like it's for the normies, but we know they're not. they're not paying attention yet. They'll gradually start paying attention over the course of the season, and it's all about March for them. But yeah, no, I think this is kind of to circle in some maybe some more national media names. Like we saw some more national polls drop, some more A10 write-ups this week, things like that. So to get all of them in there and to maybe sharpen our focus a little bit on what the rest of the league looks like. Certainly in his 15 minutes shared with two other coaches, it's not like Ford is going to illuminate us who follow this program every day of the year. We're not going to learn anything new in his segment there.
What do you think about them having the coaches on at the same time? Is that what?
I mean, I guess I don't like it in that you don't really get much more than surface level with any of them. He shared a panel with Fran Dunphy, who was hired at LaSalle, and then Archie Miller, who was hired at Rhode Island. And you really only get a few questions each. Travis did a little more talking than the other two. I think he got an actual question about like his roster, his team. It seemed like clearly they had the highest expectations of the three teams on his panel, whereas the other two coaches were new at their programs. So with Dunphy, it was a lot of like, what's it like to be back at LaSalle? And then with Miller, it was like, what's Rhode Island like? Like it was more of like the very introduction, So yeah, it was pretty surface level just for that. But they had the Field of 68 podcast, which has now partnered with the A10. And I thought that talk where Travis Ford got a full 15 minutes to himself was pretty good, Zach.
Yeah, it was. Audio issues aside, which, by the way, I think we have better audio than the Field of 68 podcast had. and I'm not talking about like background sound, and I'm talking legitimately like sound mixing was off the charts bad. But what'd you think about his sit down with three of them? I know there's been talk that Goodwin doesn't necessarily like Travis very much, but it seemed like they were cordial and the professionalism was there.
Yeah, and that's interesting because I never really, I don't know if that's just one of those things that I've missed, or I don't really know the background of that rumor that they don't necessarily like each other all that much. I don't know if Goodwin maybe Goodman
Goodman.
was, yeah, still got Jordan Goodwin on the mind, but I don't know if he was overly critical of Ford at one of his previous stops or something like that. I mean, it could be something like that, but I don't know.
Yeah, what'd you think of the interview in general? I mean, I mean, I thought that the comment about the water bottle was hilarious.
Yeah, he said that Parker couldn't couldn't guard, and he was looking for a prop, and there was a water bottle on the table, and he was just like he couldn't guard that bottle right there.
A lot of people said that harkened back to like Spoon Hour.
Yeah, that was a very Spoon like quote, like talking about Highmark or something like that. The water bottle just needs to outscore whoever's guarding him. But
do you think? What do you think about that? Because I think that Ford is very young Spoon-ish in the way he handles the media, the way he promotes the program. He's very, golly G. He is a little golly G. He's more of a street smart golly G, but he is a little more like down, whatever. I don't know. Down home country boyish.
St. Louis, it's a big city, but we would like our folksy coaches. We liked, Whitey Herzog and Spoon is a perfect example of that. These guys who are maybe a little small town, but who make it work in a market like St. Louis. That's a relatively small pro sports market. And they, for whatever reason, it just plays well there. It's, I don't know what it is, but Ford does definitely have a little bit of that in him. And I think he knows how to play that. In terms of the quote itself, there's a little bit of chatter about like how Parker himself takes that, and in our talk with Sincere,
it was a joke.
Sincere seems to be one of those guys who is not going to like take that personally. I think it's a little kind of like a motivational thing more than anything from Ford. He's not like putting a guy on blast in the national media on media day like this guy sucks. It's not that at all. It's more like, I want to play you, Sincere Parker, and maybe if you can be a little more attentive defensively, we can get you some minutes, because his scoring's undeniable, and Ford underlined that again in the interview.
Just to harken back to like some tangential spoon relation, is it reminds me a little bit of that banter that you like more friendly version of the banter, or more PG version of the Huggy Bear Bobby Brannon banter.
Yeah.
Like instead of fu,
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, man, dude, come on, guard the freaking water bottle. Like that's what it feels like to me.
Yeah,
He's relating on a level of humor and ball busting.
and there's that's a coaches have to know their players and their players' personalities and who responds to what and how they respond to it. I don't know if it's one of those things, like I don't know if you treat every guy the same way necessarily like that, but some guys you can publicly say he's a bad defender, he needs to learn how to defend because he can be really good, and they're going to respond to that more than other guys will, who might need a little more, you might need to be a little more private about that kind of thing. Did he have any other sort of like poll quotes or interesting comments from this particular interview that stood out to you?
I thought it was interesting that they probed him about Yuri Collins hitting the portal,
Yeah.
and we got some clarification, kind of, on why he entered the portal. I mean, it was he pretty much said like he was getting offers for NIL deals to pull him away from SLU. I mean, he literally said it, and
So
I thought that was kind of shocking.
my when I listening to that, he was indirect enough about it to where it's not like he was saying like this is exactly what happened, but it was more like, he said, hey, there were a few phone calls, we were really sweating it out that night, as that was going on. And then they immediately, it kind of was another question from one of those guys about NIL that was immediate. And Ford kind of said, look, I think NIL can be a good thing. I think if it's used like we kind of thought it was going to be used, but you shouldn't be using it to lure players. So it was kind of like two thoughts. He wasn't necessarily saying this is what happened and why, but if you're listening to the flow of the conversation, it sure kind of sounded like
And I think,
everyone's acknowledging the obvious here.
yeah,
Like he can't just come out and say, here's who was offering him and here's how much or anything like that. It was more like, look, like we wanted to keep our point guard. NIL really shouldn't be for this kind of thing. So anyway, so that's kind of it was not an exactly seamless transition, but that's kind of how the flow of that went. I thought that was pretty interesting too. The other thing that stood out to me was he was very positive about NCAA tournament expansion, and he thought we should expand the field to 90 teams. I put it, Zach, on our Twitter. I put out a poll not a few hours later, and I was kind of like, what do you guys think of this? Because you had Ken Pomeroy saying like we should probably expand it to 80. And then you've got John Rothstein, who wakes up every morning and tweets the same 5 things. And one of them is do not touch the NCAA tournament. So I know people are, have strong feelings about this now that it's being bandied about. But the poll results from our little informal Twitter poll, which probably had about 75 people reply to it, it was emphatically to leave it at 68.
yeah. I think Joel Joel Hall on Billikens.com went in and said, it makes sense to expand it. There's 100 more teams than there were. Uh, why are instead of expanding the NCAA tournament, why not call some of these bottom feeder NCAA teams and be like, look, you gotta do something here and be better. Or, I don't know what to do. Honestly, I think 68 is reasonable. I mean, do you have another play-in tournament? I don't like. Where do you put the games? How much longer do you make the season?
Yeah, I think on the field of 68, one of them said he
Also,
liked.
those poor guys, if they expand the field again,
They got to reach.
and just rename their show.
Yeah, that's a whole rebrand. Um, that's a good point. But one of the guys on there mentioned that he thought, and I don't know if it was Goodman or somebody else, said expand it to, I guess, 80 or 90, and make sure you get an automatic bid for all not just conference tournament winners, but regular season
Yes.
winners. Which
Yes, that is 100% what should happen.
yeah, I mean, like which
If you're
is
gonna
the bigger
expand it,
achievement.
if you're gonna expand it, it's got to be the first the first group that you let in the tournament has to be conferences with single bids for the regular season champion.
That's a
Then
lot of good teams that often don't make
yes,
the tournament. You'll have, like,
yes,
how many times have we seen like a Belmont, or somebody like that win the regular season by a mile and then not make the NCAA tournament because they stumble in a conference tournament.
it's why we'd never seen a 16 seed knock off a one.
Well, we have once. I mean, you have the
You know,
Virginia.
yeah, but it's why it's so rare is because
Yeah, that's
those 16 seeds are more than likely one bid league tournament, 4 games in 4 days winners.
and not just that, from the weakest leagues too. Like
Yes.
you're talking about like the MEAC or the SWAC or the Big South, like the very weakest conferences, the
Yeah,
Southland.
I like
Um,
the idea of either capping the amount of players you get in the turn, or like the amount of teams that go in from a
mhm.
conference. So, or get do a like a Champions League style where you get X number of teams in and that's it.
Oh wow. So like, would that only be for a power conference? Like, if you finish above the, like,
You have to have a it should be like how many teams can look at a conference and be like how many teams could finish above 500 in conference, right?
yeah.
And you have to finish above 500 in your conference to get in the tournament.
Hmm.
I think 100% that should be no doubt.
Well, and that's the fear, right? I mean, like, because people, I think in our world, in the fans of SLU and the A10 and other
That's if you
non-power
don't win the
conferences,
tournament.
the worry is that conference expansion is just going to be a way to get like bottom half ACC and Big Ten and SEC schools in,
Right.
instead of getting, two from the Valley, two from the Colonial or whatever in. Um, and those are if you can get a conference tournament and regular season winner from those conferences, that's what makes the tournament better. Having a team that's, you know like Penn State going 8-12 in the Big Ten does not make the NCAA tournament any better. Like, those like bottom half power
And it's not
conferences,
interesting.
who
It's
cares?
not
Yeah,
interesting. Like they're
it
not
really is not.
competitive.
No.
Speaking of additions, Commissioner Bernadette McGlade said they'd be open to adding a 16th program. Obviously, nothing's set in stone. I don't think anything's even being bandied about.
No,
No other comments, but it seems notable to mention.
I think it is. It's one of those things that just kind of, she's putting it out there, right? Like,
Yes.
now she's in ink, she's on record, she's on video and audio saying we're open to a 16th team.
And I think it's
So
Belmont.
yeah, very. I mean, that's probably, if you ask SLU fans, it's probably the name that most people have come to at this point. I think you might look at like I mean, I don't love the fit, but like people have talked about like a Wichita State, or there, there are a few others that maybe kind of sort of would fit, but Belmont
Wichita
seems,
State fits so well in the American though.
I mean, to the extent that anybody fits well in the American,
Well,
it's
that,
really
nobody really fit well in Conference USA either.
right. No, I know.
It's the same conference.
It really is. Yeah. So anyway, it puts it out there, and I think if you're one of those programs that might be in play for that, it's out there. It's good to know, and I think it's a smart move to say that and put it on record. And yeah, pretty interesting.
Preseason rankings, Pete. Are we mad online?
I'm not. I mean, there's no surprise to me here. I thought Dayton
I
would
thought
have
the
the edge.
numbers were a little. I
Yeah.
thought
So
that was the difference.
so Dayton got 22 first place votes. SLU got 7. VCU, for the record, had 0.
Yeah,
Now
yeah.
this is a poll. The preseason poll is the I think the quote is, it's the A10 coaches plus select media members. So that's why you have 29 votes as opposed to 15 or
What does
whatever.
that even mean?
Maybe I actually don't know which media
Who's
members that would
select
be.
media members?
I know. I really don't know how they come up with that. I'd love to
Hopefully
see a
not that
list.
chucklehead from Richmond.
Oh God. Or the is that the guy who
Yeah, he's the guy that held water for Richmond when they
yeah.
backed out in
Yeah.
2020.
Yeah, or our buddy today who had SLU as number 10 in his mid-major top 10
Oh, he doesn't even
between
deserve a mention. He like
between
mid
Furman and Toledo is where he had SLU
like
in the
who what?
preseason.
The
It's
Paladins and the
crazy.
Rockets? Like oh
Crazy.
no, he has
Crazy.
behind Loyola Chicago too.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
a
what?
few spaces.
Who?
Yeah.
Like
So
who is counting on Loyola Chicago? Like nobody's even like Loyola Chicago was picked fourth in the A10 poll by people who watch A10 basketball religiously.
yeah, and this guy, I think he writes for Mid-Major Madness, but regardless, no,
He
I'm not
was the one who
surprised.
went after um oh god. For the Bonaventure issue with the cheerleader.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
He went after Nesbitt really
Yes,
hard.
thank you.
Yeah, right. And
He
that
was
turned
ready
out
to
to be nothing.
railroad him.
Right. But yeah, so Dayton gets 22-7 first place votes. But the overall number 428 votes and SLU's at 411. That's to me that tells me there's not what you would call a consensus. If this were an election, there'd probably be a runoff for that. And you would see like if you pulled VCU and Loyola and some of the others out of there, maybe it'd be a little bit closer. But regardless, it seems like those are the top two teams, and it seems like there's not a huge difference between any one of these slots the rest of the way down.
I'm surprised. I'm shocked at George Mason 5.
Yeah, to go through the rest of the list, it's 3 VCU, 4 Loyola, 5 is George Mason, Davidson is 6th, Richmond 7, UMass 8, Rhode Island 9, Bonaventure's down to 10 this year, Fordham 11, 12 is George Washington, and then St. Joe's, LaSalle, and Duquesne are the last 3 in that order. LaSalle and Duquesne almost the same number of votes, but they were the clear 14th and 15th.
How do you feel if you're a Duquesne fan and they're picked last and Dambrot's been there for goddamn 7 years
Yeah,
or
and
whatever?
that was after they very like publicly retained him, in a
Yeah.
year where a lot of other A10 schools said, okay, enough's enough, and went and got a different guy. They retained him, and yeah, it's not looking good for them this year. But like with expectations that low, you fire him after this season. I have no idea. I don't know. They've got a beautiful a renovation there. They've got nice facilities again. I love Pittsburgh as a market. I feel like Duquesne could be a sneaky good program if they wanted to. But
Yeah.
regardless, regardless, no, I'm not mad online about this result for SLU. I think it's second place right now is fine. I'll let Dayton be the ones to have the target on their back.
Yeah, it feels like they're really valuing Josh Oduro
Mm-hmm.
and Kim English as a coach big time here. It seems like they are expecting Matt, what's his name, McKillop, to be to kind of maybe have a little learning curve, but be hold the party line fairly well
Mm-hmm.
in replacing his father. I think they might be undervaluing Rhode Island here a little bit. I think you can't count Archie Miller out. He's been to the high major, just like Travis Ford coming back. I think that I think he's got as good of a shot as any to turn that program around real quick. Note George Washington. I forgot that Jamie and Christian had been fired,
Mm-hmm.
and he was at A10 Media Day as a podcast host.
It's funny.
We have the same career path as Jamie and Christian.
He may have made a little more the last couple of years, but
He most assuredly made a little more.
but regardless, it's funny because I remember, was it Chapley who was telling us like during media timeouts, he's got the most complicated notes and sets, and apparently he just like overloads his players with information. There's a lot of data, there's a lot of different plays. He seems like just a genuinely nerdy guy who's maybe
Yes,
like overthinking everything. And so to see him show up as a podcaster on media day,
it's
to
on
me,
brand.
yeah, it seems very much in character for what we've heard about him.
You mentioned Chapley, and I had the pleasure of taking in the men's soccer game with him last night, and he was making fun of me because he was talking about how he can tell when we're reviewing a home game versus a road game because and these are his words, not mine. He says, well, after a road game, you'll have like some really insightful, interesting take on something that happened, and then for a home game, you'll just be like, yeah, the vibes were right. And I'm like, yeah, kind of.
That's a really good criticism.
Yeah, no, it's
That's great.
it's very funny. Also, he did tell us informed us that the world's the what is it the world's greatest pep band, how that came about.
Yeah, which I had honestly never heard that.
So as legend would have it, I'm like Gerald from Hey Arnold. That's a reference you won't get.
No, yeah, I'm
no.
way too old.
But so essentially, when the Billikens made the NCAA tournament, there was a competition for the world's greatest pep band at the tournament. And then SLU won the competition, and it was the last edition of that competition. So it was they were just the world's greatest pep band forever.
Yeah, I love it.
Kind of like the grounds crew. I think they did a competition for the grounds, one of the like a baseball grounds crew, and they're the world's great. I don't know. It's just funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's talk about the all conference teams. I'm mad online about this actually.
Are you okay?
Yeah.
Well, I'll run them down, and I want you to tell me what seems off to you here, because when I go through these, I was kind of like, all right, I'm mostly okay here. I might move a few things around, but the first A10 all conference team is Yuri Collins. We've got Baldwin from VCU, Foster Lawyer from Davidson, Oduro, who we talked about, from George Mason. We've got Tyler Burton from Richmond, and then Holmes, who's getting a lot of preseason hype over at Dayton. Second team's got our guys Gibson Jimerson, Javante Perkins, along with Mal Smith from Dayton, and Kamara, his teammate. James Bishop from George Washington, and Fernandez from UMass. Third team, Francis Okoro. We've got Quisenberry from from Fordham, and then you've got Norris, Freeman, Reynolds, Nunn rounding up that third team. Defensive team, Yuri Collins, Francis Okoro from SLU, Ace Baldwin, Malachi Smith, and Duron Holmes. So it's all SLU, Dayton, and VCU on that all defensive team. And Zach, why don't you tell us why you don't like this?
Well, first of all, there's 6 players on each team.
Sure, but hasn't that been how it is for a few years now?
I know. I'm being sarcastic. I'm making fun of West Pine Bills a little bit. I don't like. How do you have Davidson finishing 6th and have 2 of their guys on the first team? I think Burton and Perkins should have been switched, or Burton and Jimerson, honestly. Lawyer's obviously run away. He has to be there. Oduro, I think he's overrated, but he's got to be there. Yeah. Duron Holmes is getting hyped up. Yeah, I mean, I think Burton kind of came out of nowhere to me.
I think that's kind of a function of Richmond losing a lot of their guys who have been there for 7 or 8 years.
Oh, actually, I thought Burton. I forgot Burton wasn't on. I thought I was getting Burton mixed up. I thought he was on Davidson. There's another guy.
Burton's the guy. Burton's the guy who flirted with the NBA draft for a minute, coming out of Richmond, but he stayed, and a lot of the other Richmond guys graduated. Like I said, the guys who had been there forever. And Burton's the guy who's still standing. I still think he's kind of an outside chance NBA prospect. I personally like him as a first teamer.
He's a Goodwin prospect.
And it's also a thing, like, they've lost all those dudes. Now it's his team. And so, yes, he's going to be the focal point of every defense that plays them all season, but he's clearly going to put up numbers. He's going to put up shots this year. So I don't mind him as a first teamer.
Yeah, no, I don't mind him, but I just think that Burton just kind of he never has done much for me. I mean, I know he's very, very good. He just kind of is there he's been there on a really good Richmond team. He kind of sits in the background, and obviously Perkins is coming off an injury, so I guess I can kind of understand why they they may have left him off that first team.
Yeah.
Why is my Mac not charging? Okay, there we go. We're good. Um, oof, we almost had a moment there, people. Uh, there's been a like the volume of STL Today and Post Dispatch pieces that have come out surrounding Billiken Athletic Department has been high lately.
It really has, and they've all been really good too. Stu Durando, SLU beat writer for STL Today, St. Louis Post Dispatch, has put together a lot of really nice profiles of these guys. I feel like we're getting really good chances to get to know all the incoming players, and you don't always feel like we do. Like sometimes you have the younger guys come in, and and in a lot of cases recently they come and go. Like they'll play for a couple seasons and then transfer. Guys like Lawrenson or Markai Strickland, or there are guys where I feel like the public never really got a chance to know them because they didn't want to stick around and wait for their turn necessarily. But every incoming player coming in now, I feel like Stu is making an effort to make sure the fans know who they are and what they're all about. The latest one is on Jake Forrester, and Zach, I thought it was a really nice profile of him, especially after our conversation with him a few months ago. I feel like I've got a pretty good handle on who he is.
Yeah, I really like him. I like him a lot. I think he's just a straight shooter, a really mature dude,
Mm-hmm.
and ready to do what he is called upon to do when he's called upon to do it, as he stated in the article.
His quote about himself was, I feel like I'll be an X factor kind of guy. When I'm called, I'll bring the juice, the energy every time I'm on the floor. I feel I bring wisdom to the team and calmness when I'm on the floor. I'm not flashy, I'm gritty, and I'm simple, but you'll know when I'm out there. And I like that. And number one, I like that because he used the word gritty, and he's got some Philadelphia roots, as we know. And big fan of gritty around here, even though I know he's not a Blues mascot, but
I
whatever.
Gritty's the best. Gritty's the best mascot that's not named Louis
Yeah,
in the NHL.
he is. And anyway, but you talk about his maturity. He lives off campus with his girlfriend, and he's got a newborn son. He's a graduate student. It's a totally different perspective that he brings, and I think that's really good for this team. I think we needed another veteran big man, and everything that Ford and the staff have said about him so far have been really positive. They said he's a little better than they realized, and that he really is an excellent rebounder, and that's something we definitely need this season.
I think it's interesting. Well, it's not really interesting, but this is the second Billiken in the last couple of years that's had a kid while on roster. After about, I don't know, 10, 12 years without one, which is kind of, it's interesting because we went for a long time, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. Just a point of fact, I guess.
Yeah, Nesbitt and now Forrester.
Yeah. We talked about his leadership, Forrester's leadership, but there's also another player on the roster new this year that's taken on a leadership role.
Ford's quote was pretty funny. He to the Field of 68. He said, "Javon Pickett never shuts up." He said, we're a team that he loves the character of the team, but we tend to have kind of a quiet style. And now we've got Pickett, and he's just constantly talking. And
he's kind of like me.
He's the Zach. Yeah, I think Ford said he's the Zach Miller of this roster. I can't get him to shut up. He really seemed to appreciate the vocal energy he brings, and I think Forrester's got that a little bit too. I think these guys they're 50-year players. They want to win. They know they can win on this team. They've accepted roles. I think Pickett, he's either going to start or be kind of a sixth man. But I like that vocal character that he brings to the team, because as much as we like Collins, Jimerson, Perkins, something like they've got kind of a quieter style. A lot of our veterans, we different characters, but they've got a quieter style, and I think that's a welcome addition on the roster, both of these guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we were missing that last year.
Mm-hmm.
When you don't have your quiet assassin in Perkins,
yeah,
And Yuri Collins, I don't know if he's that guy. Not that he's not a leader by example, but he's not that vocal leader, or that, he may not have the skill to bring that calm. That, hey, everybody, we're fine, we're fine. So to have that this season is going to be absolutely huge, because I think it was a reason why a team that even without Perkins could have finished top three or better in the conference didn't, because you had so many games where we gave it away at the end.
Yeah.
When if you have a guy like Pickett, you have a guy like Forrester, even if they don't bring massive amounts of scoring, defensive stops, etc., they still are able to be like, look, we've been here before. We can do this. Like, let's here. This is how we do this. This is what Billiken basketball is, and this is how we win. So
Yeah,
I think it's gonna be huge.
that's right. And two other points out of that. One of the vocal players that we don't have this year is Martin Linson. We saw how often on the floor or off, especially off the floor, he
Couldn't
was the
understand a damn thing he said though.
but first guy off the bench, when there was a stoppage in play, clapping his hands, yelling things at players. He really was vocal. But the other thing that it does when you bring in two veteran, fifth year grad transfer players like this who both have more of a vocal style, I think it kind of does force your guys, your Jimerson, who's a little quiet and more cerebral. There's a guy like Yuri Collins who's intense. Like you called him, the silent assassin, and Perkins. I think it does kind of force those guys to talk more as well.
One guy that kind of, I think it might have gone under the radar, but there was some discussion on Billikens.com that Ford mentioned, TJ Hargrove. Now, I personally have cursed TJ Hargrove more than I'd care to admit during games, just because I thought he'd been a little out of control with the ball. Played a little too fast. Hadn't necessarily figured out how to harness his athleticism in a completely productive way. But Ford said he's in the mix to start, and he said he's playing some of the best basketball he's played since he's been here. I mean, how surprised were you to hear that from Ford?
It's going to be interesting to see how his comments all line up and materialize when the season starts, because we have another season where he's telling us he wants to play a little bit deeper rotation and he wants to play a little bit faster. If those things are true, those both bode well for TJ, and maybe we will see more of him this season. Maybe we'll see him used in a way that kind of lends itself more to his style. He's found himself kind of like last season. He went that really cold streak. I felt like for the whole month of January, basically, where he was ice cold. Even you could tell his dad was kind of getting a little frustrated, and like he was frustrated, and like there was clearly something a little going on. Like he wasn't feeling it. He wasn't happy. Um, and kind of found his groove a little bit more as the season went on. But the year before that, we kind of found a situation where down the stretch, he really was becoming kind of a spot shooter, and he shot over 40% from three. It's going to be interesting to see how that all comes together now, that he really is a pretty seasoned veteran at this point. And
I
he's clearly going to be a rotation player, but do we have a situation where he actually is challenging for maybe fifth, sixth, seventh man kind of minutes here?
I think, of course, it comes down to defense, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's not a secret to anybody who's A, followed this team, and B, followed any sort of social media or this podcast. Ford has said from day one, you play defense or you don't play. And I think that's always been the knock on Hargrove, is that he's been fundamentally unsound on defense. Probably leaned on his athleticism a little too much, as he was able to do in high school, and is able to do just to a smaller extent in college. And if he can figure out his angles and figure out his defense fundamentally, I don't see why he couldn't be in the running for A10 Defensive Player of the Year if he puts it all together. I don't know what you think, but I don't see a reason. Like, he's got all the physical tools, and as we know, defense can be played by anybody.
And not to mention, I mean, not just defensive player of the year. I think we've got probably 4 different guys who are reasonable candidates for 6th man of the year.
Yes. We've got 15 six men.
We really do. I mean, we've got a situation where
our coach was in the movie The Sixth Man, and he's got 5 sixth men on his roster.
I think we have guys who would be the 6th man of the year, a lot of them if they played on other teams, but the fact that they're all on the same team probably cancels each other out. You know, so I think it's one of those things where we won't have a clear cut number 1 guy off the bench. Maybe it's Thatch, maybe it's Pickett, maybe it's one of the few, you know, the Forrester, Hargrove, Parker, they're all right there. They're all going to be in the mix, but yeah, regardless, I do expect him to have a good veteran season for us this year.
Single game tickets are on sale at Chaffetz and for a number of road games. Loyola tickets are running low. It seems like they've almost sold out completely. Even though it's a Wednesday night, I've heard that Loyola season ticket holders will go and they'll buy up all the tickets and then resell them on the secondhand market, which is smart. Yeah. I mean, good for them, though, I guess. It's a small building. Dayton tickets go away. Dayton tickets go on sale today, Monday. Pete, the baby race is set for January 7th, the Bonaventure game. Another year, and Zach will not have an entrant into the baby race. If there are any Billiken fans out there, female Billiken fans out there interested in potentially entering a baby in next year's baby race, give me a shout.
This podcast has been just a 1.5 2-year long performance piece. It's essentially a personal ad that Zach
it's only a year long. Actually.
It's just like somebody give this guy an entry in the baby race. That's all we're asking for.
That's all. Why do you do this podcast? To further the Billiken history, to tell Billiken history? No. To get to find someone to enter a baby in the baby race.
You know, the baby race is a funny thing though, because like it's not just you have to have a baby like exactly the right age.
It's like it's horse racing.
Yeah,
it's literally like, I mean, you know, no, not even the right age, the right stage of life.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can't, you know, just because you've had a baby in the last year, the baby might be walking already. The baby might not really.
We've had that a couple times where babies stood up in the baby race. I swear it's the first time.
They put in the note, babies will be chosen on a first come, first served basis. If chosen, you will be contacted by a member of SLU's athletic department. Please note that babies must only be crawling and not walking. So that means like, okay, look, this game is 3 months away. If you've got a 9-month-old baby, forget it. Like you're getting too close. I would say if your baby's at like 6 or 7 months, that's kind of the sweet spot right now. If you've got a 6 or 7, maybe 8-month-old, maybe 5-month-old baby, that's the range.
I've got a small courtship window here.
Get your babies entered. But yeah, no, we don't want to see any walking babies. So if you've got like a 10-month-old right now, forget about it. We don't want to see you.
Are there other programs that do the baby race?
Yeah, I think there are now. There are. But
were we the innovator? I like to think we were.
If we weren't the first, we were at the kind of the front edge of this thing. I'm not.
There are people that still don't know. Like people hear about it, they're like, that's wild. Like people are still like enthralled by the idea that it's a thing when they first learn about it.
It's amazing. Everybody loves it. It's delightful. All right, somebody give Zach a baby.
Yeah. Oh Jesus. Where can I buy one?
I've got 2 for you, man. They're too old. They walk. But yeah, I've got 2.
Crawling only, please. Women's basketball, they will do a virtual media day. On Tuesday, the 18th, preseason polls and all conference teams will be announced at 10:45 Eastern Time, 9:45 Central Time, in case you don't know how time zones work by now. SLU is scheduled for 2:30 p.m. St. Louis time. Tillett will have about 15 minutes. Looking forward to this. Looking forward to seeing what they think about Rebecca Tillett and her squad of Billikens.
I am too. And I don't know the whole story here. Why do they do virtual for the women's side? I mean,
I'm assuming cost cutting. By the way,
I know they don't have Barclays Center for their conference tournament, but it's still not like a great look to
right, no.
like they get a Zoom call and we get like the one of the most expensive arenas in the country.
I think the women's basketball team added another player, by the way? Either that or I haven't been paying attention.
Okay, you're looking this up on the fly.
Nafatumata Haidara.
Walk on?
I don't believe so. She is
Really?
a senior transfer from Chicago State. Bamako Mali from Largo High School.
Okay, so Chicago State is where one of our associate
Yes.
head coaches came from, so that's interesting.
Correct.
Huh. Okay. Sorry, news to me.
Yeah, no, news to me. And I don't know why I looked at the women's roster. I really had no reason to.
Wow. Yeah, she's 6'5", senior forward.
That's a tall girl.
I mean, it's just also really a surprise. I didn't know.
Yeah, no, it's nice to give Brooke Flowers a little help in the front court, for crying out loud.
Yeah, like kind of looking at her numbers here, she started 7 games, played 25 last season. She averaged 3 points, 3.5 rebounds. So she's a role player.
Yeah,
but yeah, interesting.
Women's soccer. It's become really just a staple of our show at this point. We are Billiken women's soccer fanboys at this point.
Oh yeah, for sure. And at this point in the season, we've always got to lead off with what they're doing in the polls.
Yes.
And this week,
it's wild. I still haven't come to terms with we have a top 10 women's soccer program right now.
Yeah, it really is crazy to think about that. And top 10 in all 3 polls as of this week. Of course, we record on Sunday nights, release this on Monday mornings, and the polls come out on Monday and Tuesday afternoon.
Because F us.
Right. I mean, I guess we could schedule our recording around the soccer poll releases, but no. They are number 10 in the United Soccer Coaches poll, which is kind of the official one, up from number 12. And then they stayed number 6 in College Soccer News and number 9 in Top Drawer Soccer. The RPI, which it must update very late every Sunday night because we only have the October 9th numbers as of this recording. And they're number 14. The teams they played this week, Rhode Island was 212, Dayton was 57, and then their last 2 regular season opponents, VCU's 42, St. Joe's is 228. So we've got one more tough test and one more that should be another blowout. And speaking of blowouts, Zach, Thursday the 13th, the women had Rhode Island at home after that Get Her in the Game fundraiser, and they put on a show for the donors.
They did get in the game. 10th minute, Abby Miller, assisted by Hannah Larson and Caroline Kelly. Great ball movement between Larson and Kelly. Kelly sealed off her defender, gave it to Larson, who's nifty touch, lost her defender at the top of the box, gave it back to Kelly, who crossed it into Miller, wide open in front of the goal, put it in the back of the net. Emily Grork, assisted by Anna Lawler. This was an absolute work of art, Peter.
This is one that you've deemed worthy of that Pope Benedict meme.
Yes.
It has been making the rounds where you post 4 pictures and it looks like he's holding in his hands. And you put this finish in that square, and it was absolutely deserving of that. This was the kind of shot, if you ever I think a lot of people who are on sports Twitter by now are familiar with something like Pitching Ninja, where they show like MLB pitches that are just ridiculous. This was one of those shots that was like a breaking ball that fell off the edge of a table. She just perfectly arced this thing over the keeper's head, and nobody had a chance on this thing.
Yep. Assisted by Anna Lawler, she collected it, heading towards the end line. Quick cutback, delivered a perfect strike. Like you said, arced right over the Rhode Island keeper. Absolutely helpless. 34th minute, Anna Walsh, assisted by Hannah Sawyer. Long bouncing pass from Sawyer, left Walsh all alone with just the keeper to beat. She tucked it just under the goalie's left arm. She did get a piece of it, but not enough to make the save. 39th minute, Sawyer, assisted by Preusser and Walsh. Walsh passed to Preusser. Drew 3 Rhode Island defenders. Preusser put it ahead to Sawyer, who cut to her right to keep it away from the charging goalie. and then slid to finish with her right foot before the last Rhody defender got there. Another couple inches or split second, and she may have broken it up, but Sawyer was just fast enough. 47th minute, Heckel, assisted by Hannah Frederick. Corner kick, Frederick lobbed it in, and Heckel got up for it, putting it too high for anyone else to get at, including the keeper. The 64th minute, Carson Cole, assisted by Walsh. Another corner, Rhode Island keeper punched it out, and it looked like it hit her own defender's arm or back. Cole just calmly tucked it into the back of the net. Shots were 22-10 Billikens, 14-2 in the first half, but 8 and 8 to 8 in the second half. Piercelli had a second half save before being subbed out, and Becca Walterman, who finished the game at 3 saves, sub heavy second half, caused shots to even out with SLU's less experienced players out there. Shots on goal 9-4. Corners 6-3, fouls 11-7, 1 yellow card for each side. 6 different goal scorers in this game. First this season for Walsh and Cole. SLU now has 14 different goal scorers this season. We've talked a lot all season how they haven't been the most efficient team despite their offense. But they were downright ruthless in this game, Pete. Just absolutely cutthroat.
Yeah, clinical. And in her post-game comments, Katie Shields said that she thought this was the closest thing to a complete game that they've played all season. She's as we know, pretty critical of her team. She expects the most from them, and thought that start to finish. I mean, obviously you've got a lot of less experience, freshmen and everything coming in the second half, players who don't play as much. But the first half and the beginning of the second half, they just, like, Rhode Island just had no chance in this game. SLU was, when you looked at these goals, it wasn't just them causing chaos in front of the net and finishing. They just like the so many of those
they were just
out.
better.
Every single goal, they just made it happen. Whether it was drawing everybody on Rhodey's defense and then finding an open player, their footwork was excellent. Their head fake. I mean, everything they did. They were just toying with Rhode Island in this game. And, as we said, look, Rhode Island's RPI is a little north of 200. They're a bottom half A10 team. It's not a good team. It's a team they should beat, but 6-0, and it could have been way worse. It just really, when you're a fan of this SLU team, it's just fun to watch.
Yeah, they are absolute ballers. They are so good. One of my friends who's an alumni of the women's soccer team just gushing over them today. Was DMing back and forth with her. 2-1 win at Dayton on Sunday. This one was a little bit nervy to start off, Pete. Run us down the scoring.
It really was. Yeah. And Zach, I mean, you were luckily live tweeting this one. I didn't get to see it live because,
my live tweeting kind of sucks. I start and then I get like invested in the game and I forget about Twitter, which is right. The funniest thing, because it's like ADHD but not ADHD, because I'm actually focused on something for once.
Right. Yeah, you have ADHD of your ADHD.
Yes. I need like Ritalin to go over my Vyvanse.
But the cool thing about it was, as I was kind of following along, I was getting my son. This was a scheduling conflict for me. My son's final game was this afternoon, but I was able to kind of follow along, and you were tweeting before either Stu or any of the other people following the game, or even the official SLU women's soccer account. So I was getting the live updates from your tweets, including this first goal, which you said was a rare mistake by Emily Piricelli, caught off her line, and Dayton's Lainey Huber used her speed to beat the defense and score in just the 5th minute, which made this one a pretty, like you say, nervy start.
Yeah, I think I might have been harsh on Piricelli in this one, because it might have been and it definitely wasn't all Piricelli's fault. I think the defense, there was some miscommunication, maybe underestimating Lainey Huber's speed, as the announcer on the broadcast mentioned. I mean, she just turned it on and got to the ball before Piricelli, and I think Piricelli was caught between wondering if the Billiken defense was going to be able to take care of it or if she was going to have to come off her line and play sweeper keeper. And, I mean, Laney got to the ball before Emily did and put it in the back of the net. And, it's one of those things where this team has the ability to do what they did today, but you worry that, they don't keep their composure and that they go a little too hard to try to get both goals back at one time. And you can't do that.
Yeah, and we've seen that from them before too. Playing, there's a little more, it's kind of a panic vibe when they're playing down one.
Kind of like the men's team would play earlier in the season, where in not last year but the year before, where the men would high press and then they would get beat even further. But I think with the way the Billikens did score in this game, it shows that you just you got time. You don't need to score right back. You can work it. You work your way up to scoring again and play your game. You'll get your chances, and as long as you bury them, you're going to come away with the win.
Yeah, and that's what really happened on this second one, just before halftime. Really nice buildup, and Preußer, she is working down toward the end line, cut it back. Really nice cross, and
kind of a cutback cross. Yeah,
it was well defended too. I mean,
yes.
like this was not a matter of like there were times where, in that Rhode Island game, they bit on everything that SLU did. And this was not the case here. Like Dayton was in a really good position. But Walsh and Sawyer, really nice build up, crossed it into Preußer, and she was right there at the kind of the center of the goal box and put it home with one touch. Really nice goal.
Yep. Again, it's this team just like they can beat you in so many ways. They can beat you with their athleticism, beat you with their speed. They can beat you with, their skill too. So, and I thought this game could have been 3-1. I thought the Billikens had a very reasonable shout for a penalty, I think, in the first half. But I mean, they end up pulling out the win in a 70th minute goal, Pete.
Yeah, and this one was off a corner kick, kind of bounced around a little bit, and Sophia Stram found herself on the inside post there to kind of tuck it home after a bit of a scramble. And watching the replays of these goals, the thing about it is you can tell like Dayton's in pretty good position on both of these goals. They clearly are one of the better teams in this conference. They're playing hard. They just look so demoralized after both of them. You kind of see the shoulders go down and everybody's slumped, and like SLU is that team that can really demoralize you. Like once you go down to them, it's really trouble. And luckily this second goal was all they needed.
Yeah, things changed, and once we got ahead, like you said, you can't beat them. Like every time Dayton would attack from the time we scored that second goal, and even before, the defender was sticking them. There was not a time where Dayton was beating us one-on-one. Our defenders were reading everything that Dayton was throwing at us, and to their credit, they kept bringing the heat, and the Billikens kept repelling it every time. I was a little worried with how much they were pressing, but the ladies at the back were holding strong. So yeah. No, I didn't put stats in this for this one. That's on me, unless you have them.
I can run them down. SLU outshot Dayton 15-6, 7-3 on goal. They had 5 corner kicks to Dayton's 2. Fouls were 13-10. SLU had more, but Dayton had the only yellow card in the 56th minute. And so it wasn't quite the completely dominant performance we've seen, but SLU clearly was getting more opportunities in this one.
Yeah. Next up for the Billikens, Thursday the 20th versus VCU. This will be a matchup between the two unbeaten teams in the league. We'll get to the standings here in a minute. Sunday the 23rd versus St. Joe's to end the regular season. St. Joe's sitting middle of the table. The A10 tournament will begin on Friday the 28th. Depending on what happens in this VCU game, St. Louis likely to have home field advantage throughout the A10 tournament. And talk a little bit about a little side note to the standings, Pete, because it's odd.
Yeah, I did think this was odd, and this note applies to not just the conference schedule, but to the whole season. SLU is 14-1 now, 8-0 in conference, doesn't have a tie, but the new NCAA soccer rules mean that there are like more ties than ever this season.
Yes.
There are teams in our league that have like they're like winless, but they have a lot of ties, and you're like, oh, they're not a horrible team. They just kind of happen to tie a lot. But in the conference schedule, SLU is now 8-0. VCU is 6-0-2. And so as Zach kind of touched upon, that means that the window is still open. If VCU were to beat SLU at SLU this week, that could kind of hand them the top overall seed. It could give SLU a chance to finish. Wait, do I know? I mean, I guess it's a point system.
Yeah.
Let me think about this. SLU would probably have to lose the last two.
Yes.
Because they could get that ninth win. So SLU 8-0, VCU 6-0-2 means that that not only will VCU have to win, but they're going to have to win twice this week, and SLU is going to have to slip up again. So yeah, it's not set in stone yet. SLU likely is going to have home field throughout the tournament, but they've got to take care of business this week. And like we said, VCU is a top 50 RPI team, so they're pretty good. Dayton is now in third at 6-2. Tied in fourth, you've got Davidson and UMass at 4-2-2 each. Duquesne is then in sixth at 3-2-3. And now you've got St. Joe's 2-1-5, one of those tie-heavy teams. Fordham 3-4-1, Rhode Island 2-4-3. LaSalle is down in 10th at 3-5. Richmond 2-4-2. Loyola Chicago, surprising.
Yes, I was just
5-1. Man, of all the teams that we've played this season, along with Dayton and Xavier, they gave SLU the best team, the best game. George Washington 1-4-3, and Bonaventure now miraculously not in last place, 1-7-1, because George Mason is winless at 0-5-3.
Can we find that goalkeeper a better team?
Mason.
Yeah.
You came away from that game feeling like you deserve better.
Yes, absolutely. What do you think about ties here? The lack of an extra time. I really don't mind draws or ties in soccer, but when you play 20 games in a season, right? You can't. There's too little games. Like ties in pro hockey, cool, great. You play 82 games. Ties in baseball, sure. You play 164 games. Like there's no ties in baseball, but there could be. There's 164 games. Nobody's gonna whine. Ties in football, no. There's 16 games. Ties in basketball, that doesn't really make sense for the type of game it is, right? I think there's too few games in college soccer to have ties.
Yeah, I mean,
just do penalty.
At least it's just like going to a tie after 90 minutes is just a little
not enough.
It's unsatisfying. I mean, like when you look at this, so if you look at the overall records, so SLU 15-1. Sorry, I said 14-1 earlier. 15-1. Now VCU behind them, 1 loss this season, 8 wins, 7 ties. It's just crazy. 7 ties. They've played 15 games.
You're talking about St. Joe's?
16 games. No, VCU.
Well, St. Joe's has 5 ties in conference.
In conference. I'm talking about
that's insane.
Records. Yeah.
Like they have more ties than wins or losses in conference. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, and by a few.
Yes.
So St. Joe's 5 ties in conference, 7 ties overall. There are a bunch of other teams in the league with 5, 6, 7 ties. Yeah, it's pretty wild. So for SLU not to have even one is just honestly kind of a statistical fluke.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot more draws though in men's soccer. I don't know. It just feels like there's a little more parity and more mistakes. I think maybe a little less. Never mind. Pete, let's put women's soccer aside and let's talk about something else that makes us happy.
Yeah, what makes us happy is 2 men in a garden, salsa and pickles.
Yes,
and yeah, the pickles, it's gotten to be a situation in my household where I have to hide them from my children. because if I open the fridge and my daughter sees them, she's going to ask for more pickles until the jar is gone. And that's just how it is in our household. And so I can't enthusiastically enough recommend Two Men in a Garden. They're just their regular deal. I'm not necessarily like, I like the spicy. I've talked to before. I'm not a bread and butter guy, but theirs are good. But just the straight up, garlic, dill, standard pickle, man, it's hard to beat. It's a great product, and you can find it area stores all over St. Louis or at twomeninagarden.com.
Pete, on men's soccer side, there's, like we mentioned in the outset, they are slowly creeping up, still in the range to make the NCAA tournament, perhaps, which is I still find shocking.
It's been an interesting arc this season. Last season, they start the year unranked, and then they rattle off 16 wins in a row and don't lose until the Elite Eight. This year, they start ranked number 10th, still existing off of the fumes of that incredible season last year. They lose early, and now they're sneaking back up on people. The RPI, and again, this is only through the 9th. They haven't updated it tonight yet. The RPI is 27th, and the remaining teams on their schedule, George Washington 104, IUPUI 191.
IUPUI got postponed.
Oh, it did.
Yeah, it's no
okay,
longer.
shoot.
No big deal.
All right, and then Dayton 53, St. Joe's 89, just to kind of give you a perspective on the rest of the schedule. But yeah, SLU is still in the mix for an at-large, depending on how things go, and assuming the way their schedule has gone this year, if they actually can play enough games. But Zach, they played a weird one the other night against Division III Blackburn on Tuesday the 11th, and it was not, after kind of an ugly start, it wasn't much of a game.
No, it wasn't. But I want to scroll back to the IUPUI game. The reason they probably postponed / canceled this, and there were questions about it, IUPUI stinks on ice, and it's an RPI killer.
Yeah.
So that's why they probably canceled this game. That's a new thing now. I don't like it. You should have to play who you schedule. But I guess if two teams decide not to play it, whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, 9-1 win versus Blackburn on Tuesday the 11th. Blackburn's D3, as we mentioned, St. Louis Intercollegiate Athletic Conference with Webster, Greenville, Westminster, Fontbonne, Principia, and a few others. And I probably could have started in goal for this team. Actually, the goalkeeper wasn't too bad. Shot stopping wise, probably much better than me at that. But really had no feet, and that's from what I've been told by many, kind of coaches in that realm of college soccer, that's the difference between a D1 keeper and a guy who's playing D3. Like, both of them can stop shots. You're a goalie, you're playing in college, you can stop shots. Also, Greenville has a terrible soccer program, and every program. But it took a while for SLU to get organized. But the floodgates open. 18th minute. Peter, just run us down who scored. I don't think we need to go.
Yeah, we can do this quickly, but there was in the 18th minute, there was kind of a scary play because Donnie Ross from SLU and Ryan DeWitt from Blackburn, they went up for a header.
Yes.
Ross came in from behind and kind of clipped him. DeWitt didn't see him and had his head kind of going back, and they collided. And he was down on the field for, several minutes before they finally got him out of there. Just scary stuff. And I don't know, I assume he's okay. I don't know how he's doing, but Ross was fine. But just a minute later, Seth Anderson had one, assisted by Brian Johnson. Kind of generous for him to get the assist here because Anderson kind of did all the work. We just weigh in and got one. This is one where you say the difference is the foot, because the Blackburn keeper did barely get a piece of it, and still got in. But like we said, the floodgates open. 3 minutes later, Mads Stistrup Peterson. Am I saying his middle?
Just say Mads Pedersen.
Mads Pedersen. Okay. Because I noticed on his locker it has Stistrup instead of Pedersen.
Yeah, I have no idea. I'd call him Mads Pedersen, but there's a triathlete by the name Mads Pedersen, which I assume is like Brian Johnson.
Yeah. Okay.
Or Seth Anderson.
Sure, sure.
But
Well,
yeah,
John Klein got the assist here. His shot was stopped by the charging keeper, and Pedersen got the rebound. But then Klein a minute later got his own goal, assisted by Anderson and Buendia. Who just Anderson got it down and put a dart right across to Klein, who was there in front of the net. Pedersen got one a couple minutes later, assisted by Donnie Ross. Put his hand up to call for a cross. Ross lobbed it in, and he had it at home. It was really that simple. And then he hit the crossbar on a header a few minutes later. He kind of impressed me in this one, Zach, by the way. He was really active. He assisted on a few minutes later, the 29th minute. Alberto Suarez got on the board. He curled in a cross, and Suarez snuck in behind the last defender for a nice, easy finish. 37th minute, Mateo Boasso won a 50-50 ball and had nobody left to beat once he got it. 43rd minute, Brogan Townsend, assisted by Caleb Iverson, who lobbed it in. Goalie punched it down, and then Townsend just hit it home. Pedersen, it was kind of funny. He was kind of in the way and had to kind of contort his body to get out of the way on that one. And then the 49th minute, Zach, this was weird to open the second half. SLU at this point is up 7-0 at halftime. Do I have that right? Was it 6 or 7?
it doesn't matter.
I think, but Blackburn actually got one by Jaime Pineda. He took a free kick from just inside half, and I don't think he was necessarily trying to shoot it, but just trying to kind of get it up there and make a play. He lobbed it at the goal, and SLU's keeper, the backup Nate Shapiro, came out just a step too far, got both of his hands on it, and it carried further than he thought. One thing I noticed in the second half was that the flags were blowing hard towards SLU's goal. And I noticed that
the fact that you noticed that little detail in this game is, I don't even know.
But I'm really proud of myself for noticing that, because it really was like 5 seconds after I'm like, man, those flags are blowing hard. It's windy there. The ball gets caught up and goes just over, a couple inches past where it would have been a relatively easy stop for Shapiro. So kind of a fluky goal, but Blackburn did get one. 53rd minute, Eric Lee, help me on his last name. Assisted by Iverson. His cross looked a little long, but he was there and managed to kind of keep it on the inside of his head as he was going outside the goal. Nice finish there. And then SLU did have one more in the 90th minute by Enzo Okoye, assisted by Dylan Olsen, who played it into the box with the final seconds just kind of ticking away. It looked harmless enough, and there were 4 or 5 Blackburn players right there in the area, but it took a weird little bounce, and Okoye just kind of had gotten in behind all of them and tucked it home. And, that was that. They just kind of called it there. Zach, run us through the absurd stats in this game.
44-2 shots for Blackburn. Oh, wait, no, sorry. That's the Pelicans had 44 shots. Shots on goal, 17-1. Corners, SLU 9-1. Fouls were 7-7. I don't know if anybody that got too much out of this game. I think, get your depth in there, get the freshmen some run, have Shapiro have a howler. It is what it is. This game, it's over.
Nobody got hurt.
Yeah, no. Saturday, the 15th, Billikens win 1-0 over George Washington. Mads Pedersen, he had, like you mentioned, you were impressed with him against Blackburn.
He stood out. I was ready to talk about him.
It's like his conference, his confidence. Just, I mentioned like he's noticeable out on the field. He's one of the few that looks a little bit different. Like he's easily recognized by his hair. Mads Pedersen scored on a free kick from 23 yards out, hooked it right around the right side of the GW wall, inside the far right side of the net. Beautiful goal. The vibes were right in the crowd on this one.
That's absolutely right. You're right about him looking different. He's big. He moves a little bit differently. He's got kind of he's just got a kind of a big guy swagger. I don't know if he's just watching a lot of his fellow Scandinavian over at Manchester City this year.
Yes.
The big Viking over there, or not. But regardless, there's something about the swagger of the Scandinavian players, the strikers lately. And if the Blackburn game served no other purpose, it was, as you said, a confidence builder, because all of a sudden he really looks like a viable option for a team that has kind of, struggled to score at times this season. This pretty evenly played game. Shots were 10-9 in GW's favor. SLU had 5 on goal to their 4. GW had nine corners. SLU had 7 fouls. SLU 15. George Washington 6. Didn't get that home cooking, I guess. SLU had 4 yellows to their 3. And Carlos Tofern had 4 saves in the shutout, which was his 2nd of the season.
This was there was a great night. It was alumni night at Herman. It was great to see all the alumni out. The 3 generations of Kleins was really cool. Mike Roach, great to see good friend Mike Roach back. Got to see my good friend Nick Maglasang. He was there, so good to see him. And then good to connect with Patrick Schulte, who was there as well after we had him on the pod. So gave him a little ribbing about the winning the MLS Next Pro Cup over a St. Louis team. So
yeah,
congratulations again go out to him. So and just an overall good event put on for the alumni, I think, by the athletic department. So
good.
Obviously the IUPUI game was canceled, so the next up will be Dayton on the 22nd. The standings: Duquesne 4-0-2 in conference leads the way. The Billikens right behind it 4-1-1. Dayton 3-0-3. Rhode Island 2-1-2. UMass 1-0-5. Again, stupid.
So many ties.
Loyola Chicago and LaSalle, 2s are wild for both of them. Fordham and St. Joe's both 1-1-4. VCU, that Fordham record, surprising. Usually they're among the class of the league. VCU 1-1-3. George Washington 2-4. Davidson and George Mason both 1-4-1. And then Bonaventure not having a good year on the soccer side of things, 0-4-2. Volleyball, Pete. I will go ahead and accept that they beat Davidson 3-1 Friday the 14th. That's a shocking result. I don't care who you are. Like, the way Davidson's been playing and the start of this match, I don't understand it because they come out and they get absolutely torched in the first game, right? 25-15. They come back. They win 25-20, 25-17, 25-12. I don't... This team. Henkin 10 kills, Mattingly 10 of SLU's 11 blocks, Opperly 20 assists, Lynn 19 assists, and Rogers 21 digs. Davidson's first A10 loss of the season. Like I said, Davidson has been just dominating their conference schedule.
And not just against the bottom half either.
No, yeah. Davidson won twice a Dayton, beat VCU at home. Surprising result for SLU based on, obviously, recent performances from both teams. Now, what was less surprising was what happened on Saturday during the day. They dropped 3 straight to Davidson, 25-18, 25-19, 25-17. Malky and Rice had 8 kills each, Lynn 14 assists, Rogers 13 digs, Mattingly 6 blocks. They will travel to VCU for the 21st and 22nd. That's Friday and Saturday. Field hockey. Let's give credit where credit's due, Peter.
Yeah, they got themselves a win, Zach. Their 2nd of the season, and it was against a new D1 school, yes. Queen's University of Charlotte. This game was on Monday the 10th at Thomas Field on the campus of MICDS.
Interesting sub note, I think, is that they have not been playing it was it Lou Fuse? Or they haven't been playing it there. Yeah, Sportport. Sorry, They haven't been playing there at all. Like, the rest of their games have been rescheduled to MICDS, Principia, all these other schools. So,
and have we ever gotten a reason why? Yeah.
No, I got to imagine it's either scheduling or just, time on the road, I guess, proximity to SLU.
It's a funny thing too, because when when this game was happening and I was seeing like highlights pop up, I was like, oh man, Sportport is nicer than I thought. I thought it was just like a big floodplain out in Maryland Heights or Earth City or something. I thought it was just a bunch of open fields. And I'm seeing like these trees and these rolling hills and people like sitting there watching on blankets. I'm like, this looks really nice. What do they need a home stadium for? And then I realized, like, oh, that's MICDS. That's Sportport really is just a bunch of fields in a floodplain. So, but yeah, they got on the campus of MICDS, they got a 5-2 win against Queens. Josefina Perez got them going in the first quarter, dribbled it in and lifted it over the goalie. Anna Smith got the assist. Second quarter, Shia Dry dribbled it right past the goalie, assisted by Perez that time. Third quarter, Caroline Powell from Queens got one back on the board for them, assisted by Kennedy Bratton, which I thought was a good field hockey name.
It's
And
like
then,
the field hockey equivalent of like Braxton
like a vintage lacrosse
Braxton
name.
Southerly the third.
Yeah, one of the good Lax Bro names. And then Jenna Clares scored on a shot from the right inside circle. Fourth quarter is when the rest of the scoring happened. Caroline Powell for Queens again got a rebound off a Sophia Arado shot. Abby Vitas got one back for SLU off an Olivia Smith rebound. And then Perez got back on the board, finished it with her second of the day. This one off a Shia Dry rebound. Pretty impressive stats here, Zach. SLU outshot Queens 29-9 and 20-7 on goal, which was a season high in both shots and goals. But to be fair, Queens is now 0-10, hasn't played a home game since September 2nd against Davidson. So
Still counts.
I imagine they're exhausted, but it still counts. They're still D1. They're in the year one of their 4-year transition. But it still counts, and it's a good confidence booster. A nice win for SLU.
Real quick, they dropped a 5-0 decision to number 9 St. Joe's Saturday the 15th at Principia. They were outshot 27-2 and 13-1 in shots on goal. They lost 2-0 today to Appalachian State at MICDS. Sasha Sander had a career high 18 saves in this one, just under siege the entire day. An interesting one Wednesday the 19th at Maryville. I may be able to sneak out and make this one. I work in that area, and I'm actually in office on Wednesdays, so it could be I could make this one. I'm not sure. Friday the 21st at LaSalle. Pete, run us down cross country real quick, and then we'll get out of here.
Yeah, so cross country ran in that Weiss Crockett Invitational at Oklahoma State on Saturday the 15th. The men finished 22nd out of 26, just behind Kansas. And ahead of Nebraska, Little Rock, Abilene Christian, and Oral Roberts. Montana State came in first on the men's side and had the top individual runner. SLU was led by Toby Gillen, who finished 83rd. And then the women finished 24th of 26, just behind Oklahoma, ahead of only Little Rock and Oral Roberts. California Baptist won on their side. Interestingly, came in second on the men's side. It's kind of funny how evenly the men's and women's teams kind of finished down the line in this thing, which I think is kind of common in the sport, and I've always kind of found it amusing. Carly Sear was SLU's top finisher in this one. She came in 1/10. And then next up is the A10 Championships, end of the month, October 29th in Mechanicsville, Virginia, which is kind of a northeast suburb of Richmond. And that'll be the end of the season before they start warming up for track.
Mechanicsville, Virginia. It's like the Miller of like city names. Like, you know how like there's names of people like Shoeman was like a person who like cobbled shoes or did like horseshoes. Like, but like Miller is like people who worked in mills. Like, I don't know. It's just funny.
Smith. Yeah.
Yes.
Sure.
Yes. Well, that wraps up the week that was in Billiken Athletics. As we mentioned before, there will be no regular pod next Monday. It could be a very, very special edition with 19.9. Still trying to figure that out. But that wraps it up for us. Follow us on Twitter at Midtown Mad Pod. At Peter is a tweeter, at Zach Miller MMP. Of course, we're on Instagram at Midtown Mad Pod. We're going to try to do more with the Instagram on basketball season when I'm at the games. We also appreciate any and all suggestions you might have for the show. Go subscribe to the show on all platforms if you haven't yet. Leave a review, please. Drop us 5 stars. As always, Pete, go Bills.
Go Bills.